Hello everyone, and welcome to this perhaps most anticipated dev diary for the new historical German focus tree. It is without a doubt that Germany is the leading nation to the flow and direction of the game, with most other nations reacting to the actions of their historical path. With that, a lot rests on the interpretation Paradox has chosen to go with. So, let's blitzkrieg in. The year is 1914. And you find yourself in a great Krieg of the Ages. Sadly, you don't come out on top, and now your nation has been shafted, so much that you have found leadership under a new, toothbrush-moustached, surely very not unhinged, dictator. With history behind us and Adolf at the helm, you must try to reverse the effects of the Treaty of Versailles and raise Germany from the ashes. To reflect this, the German national spirits have been updated and added to. Starting off with MIFO bills, they have been updated with a new mechanic, where apart from taking focuses to extend the bill's bonuses, they now operate on a scaling system relative to the amount of non-core states owned. So should you play a rapid expansion Germany growing without coring what you take, they will end up losing more and more consumer goods factories from debuffs than they might actually be gaining from the MIFO bills buffs themselves. Also, there are now 3 additional starting spirits with minor buffs towards the German army, the Kriegsmarine, and the Luftwaffe, which can be improved over time down the focus tree. Next up, we get an overview of the entire historical tree in all its pixelated glory. From left to right, we have the army tree, the Air Force tree, the navy tree, and the industry tree, which collectively makes up the common branch. And I think the new military trees put the old military historical trees to shame. The familiar historical branch is still here, seen on the right, but now comes with a significant major additional branch down here for the inner circle. The inner circle we don't get to learn about today. We probably learn about that during German systems next week, but in Assumption, it seems to be a way for different, significant members of the German party to pursue their specializations and interests to rise to one of the higher positions in Adolf's cabinet, perhaps one day being named his heir, and eventually his successor. So, since the last time Germany tried this global domination business thing, it didn't go too well. How can we avoid making the same mistakes? Well, maybe it lies in a better prepared military. Starting with the army, Germany now starts off weaker, with less generals that need to be unlocked through taking focuses in the army focus branch. The branch itself, shown here, allows 2 core paths between the historical Panzer doctrine of Blitzkrieg and an alternative return to the tradition with Prussian legacy. By taking the Prussian legacy, you commit to World War I.5, War Harder, by going Grand Battle Plan Germany, hopefully using the new operational planning system to gain enough buffs to push through enemy borders before reaching the bottom and unlocking the stormtroopers. Operational planning, for those who might have asked, is a substitute for the pushing power of the panzer divisions if you choose to go old school by unlocking decisions to give 90-day mega buffs for a sudden, hard-hitting push into your chosen target nation. As we can see, for some command power and army experience, we can get a 90-day buff giving us bonuses towards infantry, org, artillery, and motorized and mechanized, so some good strong buffs for a good strong push. Coming to the bottom of the Prussian legacy path, you can unlock the stormtroopers, which are your final reward, unlocking a new support company that, as far as I see, just gives really good buffs across the board. I mean, I'm not seeing the downside, so surely this won't need balancing or have any issues with it, right? On the flip side, we have the historical Panzer path, and interestingly, they also come with a Giga decision path for operational planning, although theirs is tied to tank divisions directly for a much shorter time and isn't necessarily as strong. Regardless, the fact that they get the decision and tanks show that the rich only get richer and the strong only get stronger. Looking at the branch directly, we can, as expected, see that taking Adopt New Panzer doctrines unlocks some more notable generals, specifically Erwin Rommel, noted there. As you continue down, however, it should be noted that this is primarily a tree that's mostly dedicated towards panzers, tanks, and your ability to keep them moving in wartime. To finish this section, we should mention that by going down each respective branch, you'll be upgrading your German army national spirit that we showed at the beginning. They show here two different types of national spirit depending on which branch you went down, but if I'm being brutally honest, they are very, very similar, and I'm not seeing too much of a significant difference regardless of which one you went down. Maybe the artillery defense and the max entrenchment could really spearhead it for you, but alternatively some coordination on the other side might be what you're looking for. Next up is the Air Force, boasting a much more wide-spanning tree, allowing for specialization of plane types on the left, improving ground-air relationships on the right, and leaving plenty of room for some more experimental projects like some rockets or the America bomber. We can see in this image just how chunky some of these focuses are, with tons of bonuses, but take note of how each of them unlock 4 aces. This is to represent the immense amount of German aces throughout World War II, so make sure to take advantage of these 4 free experts once you take the focus. Do you like boats? Keeping the ship moving, let's go over the Navy path, to which we have 2 distinct paths, Plan Z and Trade Interdiction, that while they don't appear mutually exclusive, they do require you to complete the High Sea Fleet and unrestricted convoy raiding respectively before you can start the other, while actively locking the path behind them once you do so. In short, you'll have to pick between big boats or small boats that go under the sea in the early game, while actively planning for getting both in the late game. In doing so, this culminates in getting 2 significant buffs in your navy once you've got both of them, and I'm always a fan of Navy Max range factor, so I'm happy to see these spirits should you get them. Coming in hard and fast with one of the smallest Dev Diary sections I've ever seen, we have the Wunderwaffen, with a small little national spirit you can work towards across all 3 military branches, maybe even in the political branch too, but I'm unsure, to help with special projects respective to that branch. So building Gigatank 9000 or America bombers should be slightly easy if you start working down the military branch relative to that project. Taking a look at the industrial branch, we can see that it's split between 2 key sections, prioritizing economic growth and the 4-year plan, with a little bit of overlap in the center. The historical route would be to take the 4-year plan in an effort to rapidly mobilize your nation for imminent conflict, but will cause issues later on as your MIFO bill starts stacking up, shown earlier due to rapid expansion. Looking also at the new and improved autarky focus, we can see it now gives us a unique trade law after its namesake. Take note of the specific bonuses you get towards faction trade deal inside of your own faction, so it's not just about making your own country strong, but also people inside of your faction. Below that, we see some familiar styled focuses, specifically things like coal liquidation and Söderbuner work to get you some oil and rubber autonomy, as well as the very final focus, autarky achieved, when you don't have to rely on anybody else. And just as there is a unique trade law with autarky, there is also a unique economy law on the far right of the path with Total Krieg, also called Total War, Warhammer 3. As such, the historical German playstyle is built uniquely to its historical output, including a hit to recruitable population, meaning you should probably take the decision to have women in the workforce just to keep the national manpower flowing. On the ahistorical path to German domination, you might find that sudden expansionism doesn't fit your imminent goals. I'm thinking of a democratic Germany perhaps. And so by prioritizing economic growth, you will bite the MIFO bullet and pay off those bills, causing a huge hit to your current civ growth, but allowing for a potentially more powerful endgame. As we can see, paying off those MIFO bills early can cause a significant hit to your economy, 75% consumer. I mean, that is really bad. But the outputs may be worth. Assuming there's way more than just this national spirit, I'm a big fan of the buffs, specifically the trade extra resource per factory. That feature alone makes me consider paths where you play maybe a trading nation, trying to build equipment and sell it, and you have no resources, so you're getting up spirits to try and increase the amount of resources you can get with very limited factories. Comparing the two economic spirits at peak, we can see the buffs are perhaps ever so slightly better on the recovery side. However, I must maintain that annexing tons of nations around you as quickly as possible means that the overall strength you're going to get from just like the land, the lack of neighboring enemies, probably means that economy of conquest is going to be better. That's just the feeling I get. Putting the common branches to one common side though, we now get to see the actual historical German focus tree path. Taking a closer look, we can see a somewhat familiar start for Germany. We've remilitarized the Rhineland right at the top. After passing by a mutually exclusive, we've got Anschluss, Demands Sudetenland, Fate of Czechoslovakia, there's Danziger War with France around the Maginot. In many ways, this focus tree will retain its familiarity to returning players, with the actual historical route still being ever present. In fact, the historical route is so present that now you may notice a couple of German banners surrounding the mentioned focuses. That's because in Götterdämmerung, the historical German path will be visually represented on the focus tree, with frames for those who want to follow by the book. If you don't want to see them though, there is a trendy little button at the top to turn them off. This is a nice feature that actually makes me wonder if it should be expanded to nations like Italy and the Soviets, who have pretty formidable sized trees that maybe having some idea of what the devs intend to be historical for players could be good. On the far right of the political tree, we have matters mostly concerning the far east of Germany, if not the immediate east, with the Soviet Union more closely, and at the very end the Sino-Japanese War. Now, the choice between supporting China or Japan has been greatly expanded from just literally two focuses. Now we have options to negotiate back former German colonies in Qingdao with both partners and plan for overlordship over all of Asia. It's been mentioned before that the Reich Commissariats have been reworked as a new system, and here we can see two of the methods to access them, with Asia Reich Commissariats being near the bottom, and in the central path, a method to make a Middle Africa, so the colonialism of Kaiser's era isn't entirely over, and might be somewhat familiar to Kaiserreich enjoyers. With such expanded scope for Reich Commissariats, I'm starting to wonder if literally the entire world will either be a German core or a German Reich Commissariat, meaning a world conquest Germany is really interesting just to do some flavour, not to mention all the late-themed tech with special projects. Maybe late-game Germany is like an intended thing the devs are hoping people play for. While the split between either attacking the Soviets or working with them has remained mostly the same, I'd say mostly, the mechanics of the Berlin-Moscow axis have now changed. When creating the alliance, a timer will begin for the next 2 years after the honeymoon period between Germany and the Soviets is over and maybe their shared aims have been met. The ideological elephant in the room will forcibly disband the faction and reset you on the road to confrontation with one another. Basically, it doesn't matter if you have an alliance with the USSR, befriend them or not, both paths end up with a war in Russia. Meanwhile in Europe, I had already mentioned the familiarity of the tree's design, but the diary makes note of an added step in between Rhineland and Anschluss in the form of siding with the general over the direction of conquest across Europe. Looking at it more closely, if we take the historical Ribbentrop path on the right, we can get a solid sycophant who's loyal to the cause, who will get rid of those stuffy naysayers and ensure that Adolf's supreme command is unchallenged, allowing you to be far more flexible in diplomacy, meaning you have access to the very historical Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, ensuring a non-aggression pact between you and the Soviets after taking down Poland. Alternatively, you can take some slight ahistoricity and heed the warnings of von Neurath, and take heed that the Anglo-French alliance would ultimately challenge any significant war in Europe, and so, befriending and working with Czechoslovakia could avoid an awkward Munich conference, leading to the downfall of peace after Danziger War. The last section of the tree revealed comes in this small sub-branch dedicated to the loyalty of the army. In order to maintain the control of the generals, money exchanged hands and was expanded upon from there. From the focus shown alone, I'm unsure exactly how powerful this branch is in context to the quite minor buffs that you get from the focus shown. But perhaps it is just a stepping stone, allowing for such focuses as the Strafbattalion, marking a return for penal soldiers, seen last with the Soviets, I think. Maybe the Finnish had it too. I always think that there is some really interesting potential if they ever made it so that penal units had a flag on them, that if the war ever starts going south, they can defect to the enemy side, meaning it's always a risk to use penal soldiers. And then at the bottom we also see some innovative warfare, which could have some potential for special projects. The mystery remains. Keeping on topic with focuses that give us soldiers, we get to see the last focus of this dev diary, showing us how SS troops can be taken with Expand SS recruitment. Upon completion, you unlock a decision allowing you to get foreign volunteers. Exclusively only foreign volunteers though, because the only ones you get nationally are in the 6 with 6 German militia and 2 motorized. I wonder also that in the same way I mentioned how it would be cool if penal divisions could one day rebel against you, it could also be interesting if a certain Himmler, who was quite closely associated with the SS, may use the divisions to one day usurp you. So again, taking this focus could actually contribute to your downfall. And with that, we have come to the end of the dev diary. At least the dev diary I shall cover. There are some more reveals of generals, admirals, political advisors, and companies, but they don't tell you too much about what each of them do, and they're mostly just for aesthetic. So if you do want to see what they look like, you're welcome to go into the description and click on the dev diary yourself. But you might be able to see some of them on screen as we're scrolling down as I talk. Just because the dev diary ends though, doesn't mean I want to stop talking, because there are plenty of focuses here that the dev diary doesn't talk about that are really interesting. Let's begin by taking a look at the top. If we take Anschluss, we can get the Supreme Leader, which could be buffs centrally for Adolf, but more interestingly, we see support a coup in Liechtenstein, which is super strange that we see its return, with no confirmation of a Liechtenstein releasable nation. I'd say nothing is confirmed, but it's pretty funny for them to keep teasing its existence, yet it isn't actually releasable in the game. Very, very strange. The subjugate Romanian economy focus reminds me of the previous focuses in the industry tree for historical Germany, where you could subjugate Hungary and Romania. So maybe this involves a path to puppet them if they join your faction. On the bottom left is a section dealing with the Latin nations from Rome to Lisbon, allowing for both expanded diplomacy in making allies with them, but also investing in their rapid annexation. This is additionally interesting to me because doesn't Austria have a claim to some land inside of Italy? So does Germany, by extension, have a claim to the land in Italy? So by extension they can start coring Italy? That could be interesting. Lastly, at the very bottom, we see a section dealing with the war against America. And in that I don't just mean the USA, I mean all of it. Because at the bottom, we see another Reich Commissariat styled focus regarding the Americas. I wonder what the scope would be of said protectorates. Like, how big is a protectorate in South America? Is it just Brazil? Or is it literally the entirety of South America as one puppet? I'm also wondering if they'd go as far as to make an option to divide America overlordship between you and Japan with a middle demilitarized zone for some kind of men in particularly high castles kind of scenario. It could be funny. With that though, it's time for me to check out. On reflection, I think we can expect Germany to return in much the way we remember Germany being prior to Götterdämmerung. Perhaps the philosophy is that if it's not broke, don't fix it, and people become comfortable in their playstyles for nations, so adding on more choices and content but keeping the original form was perhaps a wise choice. We'll have to wait and see. So, I'll leave you here. With that, thank you very much for watching. If you liked this breakdown of historical Germany, please feel free to like, feel free to subscribe to see more videos, and I'll see you all next time. Auf Wiedersehen.